age 7, your relationship with money was already damaged. And if you've ever wondered why saving money feels painful, why you feel guilty about wanting more, or why certain amounts of money feel too big for someone like you, the answer was written into your neural pathways before you could even spell your own name. In the next 50 minutes, you'll understand exactly why you make the financial decisions you do. You'll discover why 95% of your money choices happen below conscious awareness, controlled by invisible programs you inherited without your permission. And more importantly, you'll learn how to finally rewrite that story. But first, I need to tell you about a 7-year-old girl at a kitchen table and why her story explains everything about your financial life today. Whether you're fully focused right now, or simply letting this play in the background while you work, rest, or drift to sleep, your subconscious mind is listening. The gentle frequencies woven into this audio are designed to quietly reprogram your relationship with money and abundance. So there's no need to concentrate. Just relax. Let the words and frequencies do their work. Your mind will absorb what it needs. The kitchen table programming picture a 7-year-old girl sitting at her family's kitchen table. Her parents are having another money conversation. The tone is tense, worried. She hears phrases like money doesn't grow on trees, we can't afford that, and rich people are greedy. She doesn't understand the words fully, but her developing brain is recording everything. The emotional tone, the stress in her mother's voice when bills arrive, the way her father's shoulders slump when he talks about his paycheck, the feeling that money is somehow dangerous, scarce, and connected to family tension. What's happening in that moment is more powerful than any financial education she'll receive later in life. Her subconscious mind is creating neural pathways that will influence every financial decision she makes for the next 6 decades. This is what neuroscientist Dr. Bruce Lipton calls subconscious programming. Between birth and age 7, our brains operate primarily in theta brainwave states. These are the same brainwave patterns present during hypnosis. We're essentially in a trance-like state, absorbing everything around us without the critical thinking filters that develop later. During these crucial years, we download massive amounts of information about how the world works. And much of this programming happens through observation and emotional absorption rather than direct teaching. That 7-year-old girl grows up. She becomes successful in her career, earns a good income, makes smart decisions. But there's something strange happening. Every time her bank account reaches a certain level, something goes wrong. An unexpected expense, a poor investment, a sudden urge to spend. She doesn't realize it, but her subconscious mind is running a program that says people like us don't have too much money. Her conscious mind wants financial success, but her subconscious mind is protecting her from violating the rules she learned at that kitchen table. This is the invisible inheritance we all carry. A set of beliefs about money, success, and worthiness that were installed before we had any choice in the matter. Research from Harvard psychologist Dr. Sean Achor reveals something startling. 90% of our happiness and success is determined not by our external circumstances, but by how our brain processes the world. And that processing system was largely programmed before we turned 8 years old. When it comes to money, this programming creates what I call financial ceiling syndrome. There's a number in your head right now, a number that represents how much money you believe you deserve to earn, save, or have. You didn't consciously choose this number. It was chosen for you by the voices, emotions, and experiences of your early childhood. The fascinating part is that this ceiling isn't just about income. It affects every aspect of your financial life. How much you tip at restaurants, whether you buy name brand or generic products, how you feel when you spend money on yourself, whether you negotiate for higher pay or accept the first offer. Dr. Daniel Kahneman's groundbreaking work in behavioral economics shows us that humans are not rational economic actors. We don't make financial decisions based on logic and data. We make them based on emotional patterns and subconscious associations that were formed decades ago. Consider this. You've probably met people who seem to effortlessly attract money and opportunities. They don't appear to work harder than others. They don't have special skills or connections, yet financial success seems to flow naturally to them. What they have isn't better strategy or superior intelligence. They have different subconscious programming. Their early experiences with money were different. Perhaps their parents spoke about money with excitement rather than fear. Maybe they witnessed abundance rather than scarcity. Or possibly, they received messages that they were worthy of good things rather than messages about being grateful for scraps. This isn't about privilege or advantage in the traditional sense. I've seen people from wealthy families who struggle with money because their subconscious programming included guilt, fear, or unworthiness. And I've witnessed people from modest backgrounds who create extraordinary wealth because their early programming included possibility and self-worth. The key insight here is this. Your current financial reality is not a reflection of your intelligence, work ethic, or even your circumstances. It's a reflection of your subconscious programming. And until you understand and address that programming, you'll continue to hit the same invisible ceilings no matter how hard you try to break through them consciously. The neuroscience of money beliefs. To understand how deeply these patterns run, we need to explore what's happening in your brain when you think about money. When neuroscientists study the brain activity of people making financial decisions, they discover something remarkable. The areas that light up aren't the logical, rational parts of the brain. Instead, activity spikes in the limbic system, the emotional center that's responsible for survival, fear, and primitive responses. Dr. Jason Zweig, who studies the neuroscience of investing, found that thinking about money triggers the same brain regions that activate when we're facing physical threats. Your brain literally treats financial decisions as survival situations. This makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. For most of human history, resources were scarce. Those who hoarded and protected their resources survived. Those who were careless with resources died. So we evolved brains that treat money and resources with intense emotional significance. But here's where it gets interesting. The specific way your brain responds to money isn't just based on evolution. It's based on your personal programming from childhood. Imagine two children growing up in different households. The first child regularly hears conversations about money that are calm, strategic, and optimistic. Money is discussed as a tool, something to be managed and grown. When unexpected expenses arise, the parents handle them with confidence and problem-solving. The second child hears money conversations filled with stress, arguments, and fear. Money is portrayed as something that's always running out, something that causes problems, something that good people shouldn't want too much of. Both children's brains are forming neural pathways around money, but they're forming completely different pathways. The first child's brain learns to associate money with safety, possibility, and control. When they think about money as adults, their neural pathways fire in patterns that support calm decision-making and confident action. The second child's brain learns to associate money with danger, scarcity, and loss of control. When they think about money as adults, their neural pathways fire in patterns that trigger fight or flight responses, clouded judgment, and avoidance behaviors. Dr. Caroline Leaf, a cognitive neuroscientist, explains that thoughts literally change the structure of our brains. Every time we think a thought, we strengthen the neural pathway associated with that thought. Over time, these pathways become superhighways, automatic responses that fire without conscious input. This is why someone can intellectually understand that they deserve financial success, can read every book about wealth building, can have detailed plans and goals, yet still find themselves sabotaging their progress. Their conscious mind wants one thing, but their subconscious programming is running a different program entirely. The subconscious mind is incredibly powerful. It processes 40 million bits of information per second, while the conscious mind can only handle about 40 bits per second. That means 99.9% of your mental processing happens below conscious awareness. When it comes to money decisions, this creates a fascinating dynamic. You might consciously decide to save more money, but if your subconscious programming associates saving with deprivation or fear, you'll find yourself spending in ways that seem to happen automatically. You might consciously want to earn more money, but if your subconscious programming believes that wanting more money is greedy, or that people like you don't deserve abundance, you'll unconsciously avoid opportunities or sabotage your success. Dr. Candace Pert's research on neuropeptides reveals that emotions are literally chemical signals that travel throughout our bodies. When we have an emotional response to money, fear, guilt, excitement, anxiety, our bodies release specific chemical cocktails that influence our thinking and decision-making. If your early programming created strong associations between money and negative emotions, then thinking about financial success literally floods your system with stress chemicals. Your body goes into a state that's designed for immediate survival, not long-term planning or creative thinking. This is why traditional financial advice often fails. It assumes that people make rational decisions based on good information. But if someone's neurology is wired to experience financial thinking as a threat, no amount of logical advice will override their survival programming. The good news is that neuroscience also shows us that brains are neuroplastic. They can change and rewire throughout our lives. The neural pathways that were formed in childhood aren't permanent highways. They're more like paths through a forest that can be redirected with conscious effort and repetition. But here's the crucial point. You can't change programming you're not aware of. Most people never examine their subconscious beliefs about money because those beliefs feel like truth rather than programming. The hidden money scripts. Every person carries what psychologists call money scripts, unconscious beliefs about money that drive financial behavior. Dr. Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist, has identified 4 primary money scripts that shape how people relate to wealth. The first script is money avoidance. People with this programming believe that money is the root of evil, that wealthy people are greedy or corrupt, and that wanting money is somehow spiritually or morally wrong. This script often develops in families where money was associated with conflict, where wealth was viewed with suspicion, or where there were strong religious or cultural messages about the virtue of poverty. Someone with money avoidance programming might find themselves consistently undercharging for their services, feeling uncomfortable when they receive money, or experiencing guilt when they spend money on themselves. They might unconsciously sabotage financial opportunities because accepting them would violate their core programming about what kind of person they are. The second script is money worship. This is the belief that money will solve all problems, that having more money will automatically lead to happiness, and that money is the most important thing in life. Paradoxically, people with money worship programming often struggle financially because they make decisions based on desperation rather than strategy. They might chase get-rich-quick schemes, make impulsive purchases they can't afford, or sacrifice relationships and health in pursuit of wealth. The third script is money status. This programming equates net worth with self-worth. People believe that their value as human beings is directly tied to their financial success, and they use money and possessions to project an image of success to others. Someone with money status programming might go into debt to maintain appearances, feel intense shame about financial struggles, or base their self-esteem entirely on their income or possessions. They often find themselves trapped in lifestyle inflation, where increased income immediately leads to increased spending. The fourth script is money vigilance. This involves beliefs that money should be saved and not spent, that talking about money is inappropriate, and that financial resources should be hoarded for future emergencies. While some level of financial caution is healthy, extreme money vigilance can prevent people from investing in opportunities, enjoying their wealth, or using money as a tool for growth and contribution. Here's what's fascinating. Most people have a combination of these scripts, and the scripts often contradict each other. Someone might simultaneously believe that money is evil, avoidance, and that they need more of it to be happy, worship. This creates internal conflict that makes consistent financial behavior nearly impossible. Dr. Kluntz's research shows that these money scripts are incredibly predictive of financial outcomes. People with money avoidance scripts tend to have lower incomes and net worth. People with money worship scripts are more likely to have financial anxiety and make poor financial decisions. People with money status scripts often have higher incomes, but also higher debt levels. But here's the deeper issue. These scripts aren't just beliefs about money. They're beliefs about identity, worthiness, and how the world works. Changing them requires more than just learning new financial strategies. It requires rewiring fundamental assumptions about who you are and what you deserve. Consider Sarah, a successful marketing consultant who consistently undercharges for her services. Consciously, she knows her work is valuable and that she could charge more. But every time she considers raising her rates, she feels uncomfortable, like she's being greedy or taking advantage of people. Sarah's money script was formed when she was 6 years old. Her family was going through financial difficulties, and she overheard her parents talking about a wealthy neighbor who had raised his rental prices. Her father said, "Rich people just get richer by taking advantage of working folks like us." That single conversation created a neural pathway that connected charging more money with taking advantage of people and being the kind of person her family disapproved of. 30 years later, Sarah's subconscious mind still runs this program, protecting her from becoming someone her childhood programming says is bad. The challenge is that Sarah isn't consciously aware of this programming. To her, the discomfort around raising rates just feels like intuition or moral guidance. She doesn't realize she's operating from a 6-year-old's understanding of money and fairness. This is how money scripts work. They feel like truth because they were installed before we developed critical thinking abilities. They operate below conscious awareness, influencing our decisions while remaining invisible to our rational minds. Dr. Daniel Siegel's work on mindfulness and the brain shows us that awareness is the first step in changing these patterns. When we can observe our money scripts with curiosity rather than judgment, we begin to create space between our programming and our choices. But awareness alone isn't enough. These scripts are held in place by neural pathways that have been strengthened over decades. Changing them requires consistent, deliberate practice in new ways of thinking and being. The generational transmission of financial patterns, one of the most powerful aspects of subconscious money programming, is how it passes from generation to generation, often without anyone realizing it's happening. Dr. Thomas Stanley, who spent decades studying wealthy families, discovered something remarkable. Only about 30% of wealthy families successfully pass their wealth to the second generation, and only 12% maintain it to the third generation. This isn't primarily due to poor investment strategies or economic downturns. It's due to the transmission of beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors around money that either support or undermine financial success. Think about your own family history with money. What were the spoken and unspoken rules about wealth in your household? How did your parents talk about rich people? What emotions surrounded money conversations? How did your family handle financial stress? These patterns often repeat across generations with startling consistency. Families that struggle with money tend to produce children who struggle with money, not because of lack of opportunity, but because of inherited programming about what's possible and appropriate for people like us. Dr. Monica McGoldrick's research on family systems shows that patterns of behavior, belief, and emotional response can be traced back through multiple generations. She found that financial patterns are particularly persistent because they're tied to survival and identity. Consider the story of Michael, a successful entrepreneur whose grandfather was an immigrant who worked multiple jobs to survive. Michael's father inherited his grandfather's work ethic, but also his scarcity mindset and distrust of wealth. Despite building a successful business, Michael's father never allowed himself to enjoy his success, always fearing that disaster was just around the corner. Michael inherited both the entrepreneurial drive and the underlying anxiety about money. Even after creating multiple successful businesses, he finds himself unable to relax financially. He saves obsessively, avoids spending money on himself, and feels guilty about his success. He's operating from his grandfather's Depression-era programming, even though his circumstances are completely different. What's particularly interesting is how these patterns can skip generations or manifest in unexpected ways. Sometimes children rebel against their parents' money programming, but they often swing to the opposite extreme rather than finding balance. A child who grows up with parents who are obsessively frugal might become a compulsive spender as an adult. But this isn't freedom from the programming. It's the programming expressing itself in reverse. The underlying beliefs about money being dangerous or scarce are still there, just manifesting through opposite behaviors. Dr. Bowen Murray's work on family systems theory reveals that emotional patterns tend to repeat until someone in the family system becomes conscious enough to interrupt them. This requires more than just deciding to do things differently. It requires understanding the deeper emotional and psychological forces that drive the patterns. The transmission of financial patterns happens through multiple channels. There's the obvious channel of direct teaching, what parents explicitly tell children about money. But there are also subtler channels, modeling, emotional atmosphere, and what family therapists call the family unconscious. Children are incredibly sensitive to the emotional environment around them. They pick up on their parents' stress, anxiety, excitement, or confidence around money. They notice what makes their parents happy or worried, what topics are avoided, and what behaviors are rewarded or punished. A parent might never directly tell a child, "We don't deserve nice things." But if the child consistently observes the parent feeling guilty about purchases, avoiding opportunities, or expressing discomfort around wealthy people, the child absorbs these attitudes at a cellular level. Dr. Alan Shore's research on attachment and brain development shows that children's neural development is shaped by their caregivers' emotional states. If a parent consistently experiences stress around money, the child's developing nervous system learns to associate money with stress, even if the child isn't consciously aware of the connection. This is why financial patterns can be so persistent across generations. They're not just intellectual beliefs that can be changed through education. They're embodied patterns that are wired into the nervous system through early relational experiences. Breaking these patterns requires what psychologists call earned security, the ability to develop new neural pathways through conscious awareness and new experiences. But this process is often complicated by family loyalty and identity. Many people unconsciously fear that changing their financial patterns would be a betrayal of their family or their roots. If your family struggled financially, becoming wealthy might feel like abandoning them or claiming you're better than they are. These loyalty conflicts operate below conscious awareness, but can create powerful resistance to financial success. Someone might sabotage opportunities not because they don't want success, but because success would violate their sense of belonging and identity. Understanding these generational patterns isn't about blaming previous generations or feeling trapped by family history. It's about recognizing that you inherited certain programming and that you have the power to choose what to keep and what to change. The goal isn't to reject your family's values or pretend your background doesn't matter. It's to become conscious enough to choose your own relationship with money based on your current reality rather than your inherited programming. The physiology of financial fear. When we talk about subconscious money programming, we're not just talking about thoughts and beliefs. We're talking about physical patterns that are stored in the body and nervous system. Dr. Stephen Porges' research on the autonomic nervous system reveals that our bodies are constantly scanning the environment for safety or threat. This scanning happens below conscious awareness, but it profoundly influences our ability to think clearly, make good decisions, and take appropriate action. When it comes to money, many people's nervous systems have been conditioned to perceive financial situations as threats. This might have started with early experiences of family financial stress, but over time, it becomes an automatic response that activates whenever money is involved. Think about what happens in your body when you check your bank balance, receive a bill, or consider making a significant purchase. Do you notice tension, shallow breathing, a knot in your stomach, or a sense of anxiety? These are signs that your nervous system is activating a threat response. When your nervous system perceives threat, it initiates what Dr. Robert Sapolsky calls the stress response cascade. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood your system, your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, and your brain shifts into survival mode. In survival mode, your brain's primary focus is immediate safety, not long-term planning or creative thinking. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, decision-making, and impulse control, goes offline. Instead, the limbic system takes over, operating from primitive fight-or-flight programming. This is why people often make poor financial decisions when they're stressed about money. It's not a character flaw or lack of intelligence. It's a physiological response that makes good decision-making nearly impossible. Dr. Amy Arnstein's research on stress and the prefrontal cortex shows that even mild stress can significantly impair cognitive function. When people are worried about money, their ability to think strategically, consider long-term consequences, and resist immediate gratification is compromised. But here's what makes this particularly challenging. For many people, thinking about money improvement triggers the same stress response as thinking about money problems. Their nervous system has learned to associate any financial focus with danger. This creates a catch-22. To improve your financial situation, you need to think about money, plan, and take action. But if your nervous system perceives money-related thinking as threatening, you'll either avoid financial planning altogether or make decisions from a stressed, reactive state. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's groundbreaking work on trauma shows that the body keeps score of all our experiences. If you experienced significant stress around money in childhood, whether through family financial crises, arguments about money, or messages that money was dangerous, your body remembers those experiences as threats. Even decades later, situations that remind your nervous system of those early experiences can trigger the same physiological responses you had as a child. You might find yourself feeling small, powerless, or overwhelmed when dealing with money, even though you're now an adult with resources and capabilities. This embodied memory explains why logical approaches to financial improvement often fail. You can understand intellectually that you need to save more, invest wisely, or charge higher prices for your services. But if your nervous system perceives these actions as threats to your safety or belonging, your body will resist them. The resistance might show up as procrastination, self-sabotage, or simply an inability to follow through on financial plans. It's not conscious resistance. It's your nervous system trying to protect you from perceived danger. Dr. Deb Dana's work on polyvagal theory reveals that we have three main nervous system states: social engagement, calm and connected; sympathetic activation, fight or flight; and dorsal shutdown, freeze or collapse. When your nervous system is in social engagement, you can think clearly, make good decisions, and take appropriate action. This is the optimal state for financial planning and wealth building. When your nervous system is in sympathetic activation, you're in survival mode. You might make impulsive financial decisions, chase get-rich-quick schemes, or work frantically without strategic thinking. When your nervous system is in dorsal shutdown, you feel overwhelmed and powerless. You might avoid dealing with money altogether, procrastinate on financial tasks, or feel hopeless about your financial future. Understanding these nervous system states helps explain why the same person can make brilliant financial decisions in some moments and terrible ones in others. It's not about intelligence or character, it's about nervous system state. The key insight here is that sustainable financial change requires nervous system regulation, not just strategy and willpower. You need to create safety in your body around money before you can consistently make good financial decisions. This is why practices like meditation, breathwork, and somatic therapy can be more effective for financial transformation than traditional financial education. They help regulate your nervous system so that you can access your full cognitive abilities when making money decisions. Dr. Rick Hanson's research on neuroplasticity shows that we can literally rewire our nervous systems through conscious practice. By repeatedly creating positive experiences around money while in a regulated nervous system state, we can gradually shift our body's automatic responses. But this process requires patience and self-compassion. Your nervous system developed its current patterns over many years, often for good reasons. Changing these patterns isn't about forcing yourself to feel differently. It's about gently training your system to recognize that money can be safe. The identity-money connection, perhaps the deepest level of subconscious money programming, involves our sense of identity, who we believe we are, and what we believe we deserve. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on mindset reveals that people tend to have either a fixed mindset, believing that abilities and traits are unchangeable, or a growth mindset, believing that abilities can be developed through effort and learning. When it comes to money, most people operate from a fixed mindset about their financial identity. They believe they are just not good with money, or not the type of person who gets rich, or someone who will always struggle financially. These identity beliefs are incredibly powerful because they operate as self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe you're not good with money, you'll unconsciously make decisions that confirm that belief. If you believe you're not the type of person who gets wealthy, you'll sabotage opportunities that might lead to wealth. The challenge is that these identity beliefs feel like objective truth rather than subjective programming. When someone says, "I'm just not good with money," they're not describing a temporary state or a skill that could be developed. They're describing what they believe is a fundamental aspect of who they are. Dr. Bruce Alexander's research on addiction reveals that identity beliefs are often formed as adaptations to our environment. If you grew up in circumstances where financial struggle was the norm, developing an identity as someone who struggles with money might have helped you fit in and belong. Children have a fundamental need for belonging and connection. If a child grows up in a family or community where financial struggle is common, they might unconsciously develop limiting beliefs about money as a way to maintain their sense of belonging. Becoming wealthy or financially successful might feel like a betrayal of their family or community. It might trigger fears of rejection, abandonment, or being seen as different or above their origins. This creates what psychologists call an identity-behavior conflict. The person's conscious mind wants financial success, but their identity programming says that financial success would make them someone they're not supposed to be. Dr. James Clear's work on habit formation shows that the most effective way to change behavior is to change identity. Instead of trying to force yourself to save more money, you work on becoming the type of person who naturally saves money. Instead of trying to force yourself to earn more, you work on becoming the type of person who naturally creates value and receives compensation. But changing identity requires more than just positive thinking or affirmations. It requires what psychologists call identity reconstruction, a deep process of examining your current identity beliefs, understanding where they came from, and consciously choosing new beliefs that support your goals. This process often involves grieving. You might need to grieve the loss of your old identity, even if that identity was limiting. You might need to grieve the family or community connections that feel threatened by your growth. Consider David, a talented software developer who consistently undervalues his work. Despite having skills that are in high demand, he charges rates that barely cover his expenses. When asked why he doesn't charge more, he says, "I'm not the kind of person who gets rich. That's just not who I am." David's identity was formed in a working-class family where wealth was viewed with suspicion. His father often said, "We're honest, hard-working people. We don't need fancy things or big money." David internalized this message as being a good person means not wanting or having too much money. For David to charge appropriate rates for his services, he needs to update his identity. He needs to develop a sense of himself as someone who can be both a good person and financially successful. He needs to separate his worth as a human being from his family's particular beliefs about money. This identity work often involves what Dr. Richard Schwartz calls parts work, recognizing that we all have different aspects of ourselves that sometimes conflict with each other. David has a part of himself that wants financial success and recognizes his value. But he also has a part that wants to remain loyal to his family's values and maintain his sense of being a good person. These parts are in conflict, creating internal tension and inconsistent behavior. Resolving this conflict doesn't mean choosing one part over the other. It means finding a way to honor both parts, to be financially successful and maintain his core values, to charge appropriate rates and remain a good person. Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion shows that this kind of identity work requires treating yourself with kindness rather than judgment. Many people try to force identity change through criticism and self-attack, but this approach typically backfires. Instead of judging yourself for having limiting beliefs about money, you can approach these beliefs with curiosity and compassion. You can recognize that these beliefs developed for good reasons. They helped you survive and belong in your early environment. The goal isn't to eliminate these beliefs, but to update them for your current reality. You can honor the protective function these beliefs served while choosing new beliefs that better support your current goals and circumstances. This process of conscious identity evolution is one of the most powerful tools for financial transformation. When your identity aligns with your financial goals, change becomes natural and sustainable rather than forced and temporary. Reprogramming your financial future, understanding your subconscious money programming, is only the first step. The real transformation happens when you begin to consciously reprogram these patterns. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research on neuroplasticity and behavior change reveals that changing subconscious patterns requires more than just intellectual understanding. It requires creating new neural pathways through repetition, emotion, and embodied experience. The first step in reprogramming is developing what psychologists call metacognition, the ability to observe your own thinking patterns. Most people are so identified with their thoughts and beliefs that they can't see them objectively. When you can step back and observe your money thoughts with curiosity rather than automatically believing them, you create space for change. You begin to see that your thoughts about money are not facts about reality. They're simply patterns that were programmed into you. Dr. Daniel Siegel's work on mindfulness shows that this kind of aware observation actually changes brain structure. When you observe your thoughts without judgment, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with conscious choice and weaken the pathways associated with automatic reaction. The second step is identifying your specific money programming. This requires honest self-examination and often some detective work into your family and personal history. What were the spoken and unspoken messages about money in your childhood? How did your family handle financial stress? What beliefs about wealthy people did you absorb? What emotions do you associate with money? What financial behaviors do you engage in that don't make logical sense? Dr. Gabor Mate's work on trauma and addiction shows that many of our automatic patterns developed as adaptations to our early environment. These patterns might have been necessary for survival or belonging at the time, but they may no longer serve you in your current circumstances. The third step is creating new neural pathways through what Dr. Rick Hanson calls taking in the good. This involves consciously creating positive experiences around money while in a calm, regulated nervous system state. This might involve visualizing financial success while feeling safe and worthy. It might involve practicing gratitude for the money you currently have. It might involve celebrating small financial wins or treating yourself with kindness when you make financial mistakes. The key is to pair new thoughts and beliefs about money with positive emotions and physical sensations. This helps encode the new patterns at a deeper level than just intellectual understanding. Dr. Candace Pert's research on neuropeptides shows that emotions are the language of the subconscious mind. To change subconscious programming, you need to create new emotional associations, not just new thoughts. The fourth step is taking aligned action from your new programming. This means making financial decisions based on your new beliefs rather than your old patterns, even when it feels uncomfortable at first. This might involve charging higher rates for your services, saving a percentage of your income, investing in opportunities that align with your goals, or spending money on things that genuinely bring you joy without guilt. The key is to start small and build gradually. Your nervous system needs time to adjust to new patterns. If you try to change everything at once, you're likely to trigger resistance and revert to old patterns. Dr. B.J. Fogg's research on behavior change shows that tiny habits are more sustainable than dramatic changes. Instead of trying to completely overhaul your financial life overnight, focus on small, consistent actions that align with your new programming. The fifth step is practicing self-compassion throughout the process. Changing subconscious programming is not a linear process. You'll have days when you slip back into old patterns, make decisions based on fear, or feel overwhelmed by your financial situation. Dr. Kristen Neff's research shows that self-compassion actually accelerates change rather than hindering it. When you treat yourself with kindness during setbacks, you're more likely to learn from the experience and get back on track quickly. Self-criticism and judgment, on the other hand, tend to reinforce the very patterns you're trying to change. They activate stress responses that make conscious choice more difficult. The sixth step is surrounding yourself with new influences that support your updated programming. This might mean reading different books, listening to different podcasts, or spending time with people who have healthy relationships with money. Dr. Albert Bandura's research on social learning theory shows that we learn not just from our own experiences, but from observing others. If you want to develop new patterns around money, it helps to observe people who already embody those patterns. This doesn't mean copying someone else's exact strategies or trying to become someone you're not. It means exposing yourself to examples of healthy financial thinking and behavior so that your nervous system can begin to recognize these patterns as normal and safe. The seventh step is patience and persistence. Subconscious programming developed over years or decades, and changing it takes time. The goal isn't perfection but progress, gradually shifting your automatic responses in a direction that better serves your current goals and values. Dr. Bruce Lipton's research suggests that it takes consistent practice over several months to establish new neural pathways that can compete with old programming. But once these new pathways are established, they can become just as automatic as the old ones. The beautiful thing about this process is that it's not just about money. When you learn to consciously reprogram subconscious patterns in one area of your life, you develop skills that can be applied to any area where you want to create change. You begin to see yourself as the author of your own experience rather than a victim of your conditioning. You develop confidence in your ability to grow and evolve throughout your life. Summary: your financial awakening. We've traveled deep into the hidden landscape of your subconscious mind, exploring the invisible forces that shape every financial decision you make. We began with that 7-year-old girl at the kitchen table, absorbing messages about money that would influence her for decades. We discovered how your brain, operating primarily in theta brainwave states during your early years, downloaded massive amounts of programming about money, success, and worthiness without your conscious awareness. We explored the neuroscience of money beliefs, learning how thinking about money triggers the same brain regions that activate when we're facing physical threats. We saw how 95% of your mental processing happens below conscious awareness, creating automatic responses that feel like truth but are actually inherited programming. We examined the 4 primary money scripts that drive financial behavior: money avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilance, and how these scripts often contradict each other, creating internal conflict that makes consistent financial behavior nearly impossible. We investigated how financial patterns pass from generation to generation, not through genetics but through the transmission of beliefs, attitudes, and nervous system responses. We saw how breaking these patterns requires more than just deciding to do things differently. It requires understanding the deeper emotional and psychological forces that drive them. We delved into the physiology of financial fear, discovering how your nervous system's threat detection system can perceive money-related thinking as dangerous, triggering stress responses that make good decision-making nearly impossible. We learned that sustainable financial change requires nervous system regulation, not just strategy and willpower. We explored the identity-money connection, understanding how beliefs about who you are and what you deserve create self-fulfilling prophecies that either support or sabotage your financial success. We saw how changing financial outcomes often requires updating your fundamental sense of identity. Finally, we outlined a 7-step process for reprogramming your financial future: developing metacognition, identifying your specific programming, creating new neural pathways, taking aligned action, practicing self-compassion, surrounding yourself with new influences, and maintaining patience and persistence. The central insight that emerges from all of this is profound yet simple. Your current financial reality is not a reflection of your intelligence, work ethic, or even your circumstances. It's a reflection of subconscious programming that was installed before you had any choice in the matter. This realization is both humbling and empowering. Humbling because it means that much of what you thought was conscious choice was actually automatic programming. Empowering because it means you have far more potential for change than you might have believed. You are not destined to repeat the financial patterns of your past. You are not limited by your family's beliefs about money or your early experiences with scarcity. You are not trapped by neural pathways that were formed decades ago. Your brain is neuroplastic, capable of forming new pathways throughout your entire life. Your nervous system can learn to feel safe around money. Your identity can evolve to include financial success and abundance. Your subconscious programming can be updated to support rather than sabotage your goals. But this process requires consciousness, patience, and self-compassion. It requires treating your old patterns with understanding rather than judgment, recognizing that they developed for good reasons, even if they no longer serve you. It requires consistent practice in new ways of thinking, feeling, and being around money. It requires surrounding yourself with influences that support your growth rather than reinforce your limitations. Most importantly, it requires recognizing that this work is not just about money. When you learn to consciously reprogram subconscious patterns, you develop the capacity to create positive change in any area of your life. You become the conscious author of your own experience, rather than the unconscious victim of your conditioning. You develop what psychologists call earned security, the ability to create safety and stability through your own awareness and choices, rather than through external circumstances. This is perhaps the greatest gift of understanding your subconscious money programming, the recognition that you have far more power than you realized to shape your financial future, and, indeed, your entire life experience. The 7-year-old at the kitchen table absorbed programming that wasn't consciously chosen. But you, as an adult with awareness and tools, can choose what to keep and what to change. You can honor the protective function of your old patterns while creating new ones that better serve your current reality. Your financial future is not predetermined by your past. It's being created moment by moment through the choices you make from whatever level of consciousness you currently possess. And consciousness, like wealth, can always be expanded. O Trone. As we come to the end of this exploration, take a moment to notice what's shifted in your awareness. Perhaps you're beginning to see patterns in your own financial behavior that you hadn't recognized before. Maybe you're feeling a sense of relief that your struggles with money aren't character flaws but natural results of unconscious programming. The journey of financial transformation is not about becoming a different person. It's about becoming more fully yourself, free from the limitations that were imposed before you could choose them, able to make financial decisions from consciousness rather than conditioning. Remember that change happens gradually, often in ways that aren't immediately visible. Trust the process. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small shifts and insights along the way. Your subconscious mind has been listening to every word of this conversation, absorbing new possibilities, beginning to create new neural pathways that support abundance rather than limitation. Whether you are actively focused or simply allowing these ideas to wash over you, the seeds of transformation have been planted. With gentle attention and consistent practice, they will grow into a new relationship with money that serves your highest potential. The invisible inheritance you received in childhood was not your choice, but the conscious inheritance you create for your future self, and perhaps for the next generation. That is entirely up to you.